In this lesson, we're going to refactor our post method to use vanilla JavaScript instead of Jquery, and this will also improve readability and reuse. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we have the document ready function. That's from Jquery. And so we have Jquery, but let's go ahead and convert this to vanilla JavaScript. And the way I do this, because I can never remember how, is I just search JavaScript, document ready, and function, no Jquery. So that way we can see on somewhere that somebody wrote a document on how to do this, and it looks like a very popular question on Stack Overflow. It's got a lot of really highly rated answers here too. So these are people's contributions to Stack Overflow in answer to these questions. And so in this particular question, we want to replace Jquery. We're not going to remove Jquery, but this is just an exercise. We want to replace it so we can do this with vanilla JavaScript now. And so it looks like this event listener is the way to go. We're going to look for DOM content loaded. It's the top answer. And we don't really care about IE8, and that's the only one this answer doesn't really cover. So let's go ahead and make a new function up above. So that way we keep them both working for now until we get the new one fully working, and then we'll remove the old one. So that should give us two ready functions now, one that's a vanilla JavaScript one and one that's a Jquery one. So let's go ahead and see what we can do on getting a form element in our new function. So I just type in JavaScript get form, and then we're going to do by, and we want it by the name since that's what our form is using. Nope, let's do it by ID because that's what we're actually using is the ID. And then so let's try the first one. Nah, I like Stack Overflow, so let's see what we have. Mozilla Developer Network probably has the answer, so let's go ahead and try that. So let's see what this says. Definitely for JavaScripty things, this is my go-to is MDN. And so we've got a form here with an ID, and then you can see here it's as simple as document.getElement by ID. So we'll just go ahead and put that in up here. Nicely, VS Code is giving us a JavaScript Intellisense to help us autocomplete. And so we need the name of our form, and this is the notify me one. So we call it notify me form, and we'll just go ahead and capture that into a constant. Now, JavaScript ES6 has different types of variable declarations, and constant is for a variable declaration that is not expected to change the value of the variable. So here's our form. We need a name. Don't have one, or an ID. So let's go ahead and call the ID notify me form. And now we can go ahead and get that element by ID, which we already have in our code when we get there. There it is. All right, so let's go ahead and console log something. This is a good practice so you can see that something's working with a minimal amount of effort. So let's just print out the form action. And then we'll see that it's actually running this document ready, and then the same, it'll run the Jquery document ready still too. So let's run it, refresh the browser, and we got our form action. So our new document ready function is running. So let's go ahead and do a little bit more. We don't need this line anymore. So we'll cut it, and let's go ahead and look for the next thing to do. So let's do form add on submit. So we're not using Jquery anymore, so we need to find out how do we listen to somebody clicking the submit button on a form. And then there's MDN again, and there's a submit, And let's see what code example they have for this. So there's the form with the ID, and then it looks like they just have form, add event listener, submit, and then you pass it a function. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to add a form, add event listener, and we're going to say we want the submit method, and then we're going to pass in a function. And I'm going to just type the function inline right here. I'd like to take EV as the event parameter that gets passed into us, and then let's just console log to see when we click on that button, do we get this logged out? Now it's going to do the same form submit down below, but we'll at least see it submitting here. So then let's try this again, refresh the page, and let's put a breakpoint on here because we might miss it. Well, can't get rid of that one, so let's just leave it for now. I don't know why I can't get rid of it. And there's our form submit. That's great. And then when we go ahead and run this, we've got our message. So both functions are working. All right, what's next? So we don't need that anymore, and let's go to the next thing. Okay, so the next thing we need is the prevent default, which we are doing down below, because this, if we remove what's down below that's preventing default, the form will just go ahead and submit once we remove that. So when we prevent default here, that'll work there. And now we need to go ahead and get the form element value from for our email. And let's go ahead and tack on MDN again. Okay, let's get the form element and see what they say. And let's see, we've got an element there, element ID. Okay, we can get all elements. And we can get inputs, and so we can get them as a hash and then ask for them by ID, it looks like. So we're going to get a document, it's going to give it to us as a hash, and we can do inputs by the name or ID here. So let's see what we do. So let's do form, and we're going to get elements. And then we're going to go ahead and use our square brackets, and we want the email element's value. So let's go ahead and save that to a constant because we don't expect that value to change. And then we'll console log and see what we get. Okay, back to our page, and we'll refresh. Got our submit, and we've got the email. So that's all working. So we're moving right along. And let's just prove that out again really quick. So notify me, and there it is. Okay, so it wasn't working. Form is not defined, so I guess we didn't see. I thought I saw it in the console, but I guess not. Oh, the email was coming from the other form, or the other function. So we need to fix something here. So that form is not being found. Oh, because we're in a listener. So we need to go ahead and grab the current target. I wonder why that didn't work. Well, let's find out. Because I would expect our argument capture to oh, yeah. I would have expected argument capture up above to grab the form as it was defined there. So now it got it. So that spit out the email. That is correct. So it looks like that form was not able to be seen scope-wise inside of the event function. So it was out of scope, so we actually had to define another form variable inside. So it's probably because we were using const, and so it might not have the same variable catcher. We'll have to look that up and see. I'm pretty sure a variable would have grabbed that element, or that if we used var, it would have grabbed it. All right, so moving on to the next thing, we're going to go ahead and do the fetch API. And MDN again. And they always have good examples, which I love. So you'll notice that I don't know this code by memory. I see a lot of people asking, when will I learn how to do this coding by memory and not have to look up the documentation? I never remember. I always look up the documentation. So just so you feel comfortable looking up the documentation, I don't know anybody who doesn't. All right, so here we are. Let's do we've got our email, which is great, and let's go ahead and start doing our new fetch function. So we're going to use the async version of this, which is more modern and more readable. So this will improve readability as we go. All right, so it's going to be fetch and then the URL. So that's what we need here. Let's get a response. And we'll do an await. And let's do our fetch. And then pass in the URL, which is coming from our form, I believe. Yep, it's coming from the form attribute action. Which is funny, we were using Jquery down below, and now we're using vanilla JavaScript, which is much simpler in this case. It's just form.action. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is put in our method. Post, just like we did down below. And the next thing is we don't need any of these. We only really need the content header. So we're just going to do that, as you can see here. Of course, it's for cross-site scripting. You might have seen that over there in the MDN documentation. We don't need that for this application. I don't feel like typing that out, so I just paste it. And then the next piece is our body. So again, we'll copy and paste that. Okay, so now we've got an async function. And so we didn't need a bunch of these things, so we only used the things that we needed. And then we're going to do a response at the end of this. Let's go ahead and put that here. This is a little bit cleaner than it was down below using the promises. I mean, this is a different way of using promises, so this is asynchronous. Still promises, but another way to do it. And let's save that to a variable, a constant variable. And we're going to do await, so that way we're awaiting for the promise to complete, and then we'll go ahead and log out this JSON string, or JSON object. That's a little bit cleaner than it was down below. We'll have to take a look at that later on to compare it before we delete it. All right, so we refresh. Let's run this again. And click notify me. Let's see what it's going to do. So we've got our fetch, and we're going to get a response here. Let's go ahead and run to it. We've got our body. And what do we have? An error. Well, that's good. Errors are good because we learn something when we try to fix them. All right, data. Data is not defined. So a copy paste error. So we need some data first, which we didn't define up above, and this will be our email, and then the email we grabbed from the form. And so now we have a data variable to grab. All right, we refresh. Let's go ahead and enter an email and click notify, and now let's see what happens. Okay, let's see, we're down here, and let's just step this one. And we've got something. We've got the email, so this is working. And we got two, one from the old and one from the new. So that means we submitted it twice. What's neat though is that Firestore database, because we're using a document and we're using the email, the same email will not be duplicated. It does a get from the database for that email, and then it'll do a modify, so we won't get a duplicate record. And that was from, I believe, lesson 5, maybe 6. Okay, so let's see, we've got this function, and it's a little bit longer, a little bit harder to read, all these dots and indents and parentheses, so let's just go ahead and delete it now, and we have our much cleaner version, which is much smaller, as you can see, and easier to read. Everything's in sections, it's not linking together. Now we got extra here, hold on. Okay. It's nice that VS Code kind of indicates that with the little curly lines. All right, so we'll refresh and see what we get. Much smaller is that function now. Okay, we got our message. We did not console log out the email like we were doing before. That's okay. Okay, what's next? We've got let's see, so looking at a function that I had done before, this one actually looks a little bit smaller, which is good. So it's got async and await, that's good, inside the body. And then our data up here, our event listener, and that is much cleaner, easier to read. Okay, so what's the next thing? We've got a form action here, so that's great. We've got a notify me form. We've got two forms on this page, you'll remember from lesson 3, I think it is. We've got one at the top for notify me, and then we've got one down at the bottom for sign me up. Now, we can reuse this function if we just do a couple of things here. So let's go ahead and refactor a little bit, and we'll clean this up even more so we can reuse it. So we've got our notify me form right up here, and we've got the element by AD on the event listener. So let's see how we can clean this up for reuse. So the first thing I'm going to do is break out the event listener, and I'm just going to add it right here. So we've got add event listener, and we're going to create a submit function, and we're going to change our function that we were passing in, and we're going to grab it right here. And let's go ahead and paste it up above it so it's easier to see that we're defining that first. So we'll just cut it, and we'll just put it up above it. So now there's a function, and it's outside, and let's correct the indentation a little bit. Okay, and it's outside of the listener so we can actually reuse it. And why does this indentation look funny? It looks like I was missing a bracket. And now the little curly line is saying that I have an extra one. Okay. Now there's something wrong with this one. Oh, I can just remove it. That was an extra one. Okay. So now we've got our listener. So this listener just got cleaned up a lot. And we've got a form for our notify me form. So let's go ahead and remove that. We're going to go ahead and just not use the variable and just add the event listener there. And then let's reuse it and do the exact same thing for the sign me up form, or whatever that's called. We're going to have to add some attributes to this, wherever it is. Let's see, so it's down at the bottom, isn't it? There it is. So it's completely empty, so it won't actually do anything useful for us right now. So let's go ahead and add some things. So let's go add an ID, and we'll call it sign me up form, or sign up form. And let's go ahead and add a method, and it's going to be post. And let's go ahead and add the action, and this one's going to go to sign up. Okay, so now that event is going to process both forms without having to add any extra code, just because we reorganized or refactored the existing code. So we made it more readable, and now we also made it reusable. Let's go ahead and change this to a sign up form. So now these are both calling the submit function, and they'll submit to the database. So that's how we refactor code. And notice that we did that in small chunks. Okay, and let's go ahead and test it out in our browser. Refresh. And let's see, make sure this one still works. I clicked, and I can't tell. So let's go ahead and put a breakpoint, and let's see what we get. Okay, so it is running. Let's hit our breakpoint, and let's go ahead and just step through. And then if you step here, you just step over, so you got to put a breakpoint inside. And then let's see if we get a record back. And we didn't. So let's check our network tab and see if we're getting back a record. Let's see. So put a breakpoint up here. It might be breaking there because it doesn't look like it's getting to the bottom. Okay. It's just getting swallowed up. So let's see what we can do here. So let's do okay, this is a function that we didn't ever call. So we had to actually call it here at the end. We defined it in the block, but we never actually called it. So putting those empty arguments down there, we'll go ahead and call that function. That's better. Okay, and now we've got a response. Excellent. Okay, and that's it. Thanks for watching.